It's an unfortunate fact that in a heterosexual relationship, it tends to be the man who takes care of the finances. He's the one who makes the big decisions when it comes to investing, mortgages, insurance, and so on. But it's a big problem, and especially for women when a relationship breaks down. Our guest on this episode is Alison Kosik. Alison was known internationally as the face of Wall Street for CNN. She was a business correspondent, and yet when it came to the crunch, she realized that even she knew less about personal finance and financial decision making than she thought she did. Now she's written a book called What's Up with Women and Money to help other successful women avoid the same trap that she fell into. In this episode, Alison explains why leaving it to her husband to manage their finances was the biggest mistake of her life.
I was CNN's business correspondent for 15 years. I often reported from the New York Stock Exchange, the biggest stock exchange in the world. But in my own life, I wasn't involved in managing my own finances.
What women really need, Alison says, is a financial plan.
If you want a full view of like where you are now and where you're going, I think a certified financial planner is the way to go.
And she has advice for parents on how to instill financial confidence in girls.
Just bringing it out into the open and having a conversation daily about money is really, really important.
So here is my interview with Alison Kosik. I started by asking her how she came to realize that she needed to wise up about money.
So a full disclosure on this first, yes, I was CNN's business correspondent for 15 years. I often reported from the New York Stock Exchange, the biggest stock exchange in the world. But in my own life, I wasn't involved in managing my own finances because I let my husband handle all things financial. And that wound up being the biggest mistake of my life, because when the marriage went bad, because he handled all the financial stuff, I wound up staying in the marriage years longer than I should have. I felt stuck because I felt overwhelmed at having to suddenly handle all the financial responsibilities that I had not yet been experienced in actively doing. So I didn't have the confidence. I didn't think I had the good judgment. I didn't think I had the knowledge necessary to actively make those investing and just personal financial decisions. And here's the full disclosure part. And being a journalist and reporting on the markets is very different from putting your own money in and the fear of making a mistake. So in my situation, I had 2 kids under 10 years old at the time. What if I made a mistake? What if I lost all of our money? That's what was going through my mind. I understood dividends. I understood compounding. I understood when to buy, when not to buy. I understood how to conservatively buy stocks and funds and things. I had that knowledge. I wouldn't have been able to be a reporter if I didn't have that knowledge. What I didn't have was the confidence to actually do it myself. There was something just that held me back, that made me say, okay, husband, you handle it. I trust you. And so it's just a very different reporting on the markets as opposed to putting your own money into it.
It does sound crazy, Alison, that you of all people struggled with financial decision making. And yet it's not unusual, is it? Many successful, highly educated women like yourself struggle with money.
That's what's been so surprising in my research and my interviews that I did for my book, What's Up with Women and Money. The most surprising thing was it's those high achieving women, those women making 6 figures or more who feel the same way I felt, which really was a huge surprise. So here are a couple of examples. One woman I interviewed in the book, and by the way, I call these cautionary tales. I interview a lot of women in this book to give these cautionary tales to the reader to show what happens if you're not involved in your financial life. So one of them is a woman working in the venture capital space. She's raising money for companies. She's growing companies. When I interviewed her, I heard words like, I'm terrified about money. Money overwhelms me. I don't know where to start. I'm not good at it at all. And here's the thing. She was 53 at the time when I interviewed her. She didn't have one retirement account set up. She had never budgeted and didn't know the basics about personal finance. She was sobbing to me on the phone. We were both crying. I was crying for her. I felt terrible. You know, there's a lot of shame and embarrassment that goes along with this. If you're a badass in your career and in your day job, and then you can't figure out how to not feel overwhelmed and how to get involved in your own financial life, that's embarrassing. You know, there's a fear, as what I felt, there's a fear of looking like you're unintelligent or, that you're incompetent. But it's not that she or I was incompetent or incapable. It's just we weren't confident about making these financial decisions. Um, Another one that comes to mind, this is through a CFP who I interviewed for the book. She said she had a couple in her office who had just gotten married, a woman at 29 years old. She was a physical therapist. The husband had an MBA, so he thinks he knows everything. And she said point blank to this certified financial planner, he's investing in these crazy fintech platforms. And the new wife said, I let him do all of it. I don't understand it. I don't want to understand it. He's really smart. He knows what he's doing and he likes doing it. So I trust him. That's giving over everything, but not planning for a proverbial plan B. God forbid, what happens if he gets hit by a bus? Do you know what assets you're carrying? Do you know how much debt you have? Do you know the passwords to the investment accounts? Who are the beneficiaries on your accounts? Just those things there. It's worrisome that there isn't enough involvement of women, many women in their financial households.
All this begs an obvious question. Why do so many successful women lack the knowledge and confidence they need when it comes to money?
I mean, it could be as simple as, we lead busy lives. We're running companies, we're building our careers. And when we get home, the last thing we want to do is dig into some good old fashioned financial literacy and figure it out. We're exhausted after a long day. We've got kids to take care of. Um, so there's just, so that's one of the reasons you may put it off to the husband to do or just avoid it altogether. I think a deeper issue that probably is at the crux of all this is that there's a cultural aspect to the relationship that women have with money, and it starts young. It starts when we're girls, and whether parents want to admit it or not, maybe they're doing it, and they don't realize they're doing it. But girls and boys um, are socialized differently around money. And it's not that girls are told that money isn't important. It's that boys are often introduced to the family finances early. They're encouraged to become more financially independent earlier. And so girls wind up being uninvolved. And in some cases, uninvolved girls in the money stuff can become women who avoid money issues. And that avoidance can be compounding. The more you avoid something, the more fearful you can become of it. And so that avoidance can lead to a lack of interest. That lack of interest can lead to a lack of information. That lack of information can lead to a lack of confidence in being able to manage your finances, whether it's budgeting and how much you're spending or investing or even negotiating for a higher salary.
You've just published a book, What's Up with Women and Money. Why did you write it and what did you want to achieve?
I wrote this book because of what I went through, meaning in my divorce or before my divorce and sitting in a marriage for years longer than I should have was not a fun experience. And that feeling of stuck was something I wouldn't want any woman to feel. And when I was thinking about getting a divorce, I remember looking around for a book that would help me with this financial stuff to give me that encouragement to that I could make these financial decisions. And there are a lot of books out there on financial literacy, how to do this and how to do that, how to invest, you know how to negotiate for a higher salary, and that's great. But the one component it didn't have was, well, who am I to think that I'm going to be able to do all these things? There was no book out there that spoke to the confidence aspect of it or that explained why I felt the way I felt. And so I decided to write the book because I wrote the book that wasn't out there. But more importantly, I wrote the book to keep other women from making the same mistakes I did and to give that confidence that may not be out there. Because when I decided to write this book and explored the fact that there are a lot of women who won't admit it, they won't readily admit it because it's embarrassing. There are a lot of women out there who aren't involved in their financial lives. I want to help them to become involved because I discovered that there's really an urgency across the economic and age spectrums that you have to be involved in your financial lives because life can be blissful now, but life can also change on a dime. Even if you have a husband who is taking care of everything financially and you don't have to work, there are cautionary tales in my book that I show why women, even when you're being taken care of, you have to know what's going on. You have to have full visibility. And you should also keep a toehold in the water as far as your career goes. You still should be doing something that can keep your career moving forward. Even if it's a little something very part time, it's so important to keep that going.
Now, the full title of the book is What's Up with Women and Money? How to Do All the Financial Stuff You've Been Avoiding. Why do you think people, and let's face it, not just women, put these things off?
I think just like anything, it's human nature to procrastinate on something that you don't feel is a priority. And also, it's that fear. And you sort of build it up. So you avoid something, you can become fearful of it, and it becomes this thing to tackle. And it becomes so much more challenging as time goes on. In your mind, it becomes more challenging as this bigger thing to scale. And what's interesting, at least in my situation, with each little transaction that I accomplished out of my divorce, that was empowering in itself. I gained the confidence just by doing those things. So, for example, even though I did it completely incorrectly, one of the first things I had to do out of my divorce was turn in my leased car. And I completely screwed it up. I mean, I walked in there thinking, I'm smart. I can handle this. How hard can this be? I understand how to buy a car? Oh, no. No, no. I gave away all leverage when I walked in. I told the car salesman asked me, if I wanted to buy or lease, and I told him. He asked me what I wanted for my monthly payment, and I told him. Little did I know, just with those bits of information, I gave away all leverage, allowing him to manipulate what I was doing there, what my goal was there for, and then he can manipulate the price to what I want. And only when I was writing the book did I realize I was ripped off. And I was so happy that it's one of my chapters is how to buy a car as a woman, because it's such a frustrating experience. I mean, the car salesmen and saleswomen, they do that for a living every day. When they go to work, we don't buy cars, but every couple, 3, 5 years, we're not experts. We don't know the ins and outs. We don't know the jargon. So I walk you through literally how to buy a car. And surprisingly, 90% of the work you have to do, you don't even have to leave the house.
Hi, I'm Mark Hebner, and thank you for watching or listening to Scientific Investor, which is brought to you by Index Fund Advisors. When I founded IFA.com 25 years ago, one of my goals was to educate people about how financial markets work. I wanted them to stop speculating and start investing, and that remains an important part of my mission today. You'll find a wealth of high-quality content on our website, on our app, in my book, and on our YouTube channel. Please take a look and share our videos and articles with others you think would benefit. And together, we can help change the way the world invests.
In researching your book, you spoke to a number of inspirational women, people like Sheryl Sandberg, Rebecca Minkoff, and Jessica Alba, for example. What are the standout lessons you learned from those women?
I did want to approach writing this through a journalist lens, so not just give the tips and the tools and the mechanics of financial literacy, but I wanted to tell stories. So I told the cautionary tales of anonymous women, and I wanted to bring in some celebrities to show, hey, celebrities are just like us, sort of. No, but they are. They have, what I realized was every woman has a money story. And even someone like Jessica Alba, she talked about how imposter syndrome made her feel tremendously vulnerable and exposed. And she gives tips on how to break free of it. She says she focuses on the light or the goal that will give her the push to move forward. And she says it's the fake it till you make it mentality and focusing on the ideal outcome. And she says you have to start behaving as if it's already happening. Sheryl Sandberg had some interesting thoughts on taking the reins of your finances. And she said, until we are financially strong and independent, we are dependent. And just like we won't accept dependence in other ways, we shouldn't accept it with our finances. I also interviewed Deepika Mutiala, and she is a part of an immigrant family, and she said about how money has always been a source of tension in her life, and some of the biggest arguments w- she's witnessed over her life weren't just with family, but friends have argued about money too. And this, she talked about the struggles of being an immigrant, and her push to try to open doors for herself in the business world. And one more I want to tell you about. This one was interesting. Barbara Corcoran, um, she's one of the sharks on the Shark Tank show. And she founded the Corcoran Group, which is a real estate brokerage firm here in New York City. And she said during the 30 years she was at the Corcoran Group, she was never asked, not one female manager or support staffer ever asked her for a raise. Not one. And 90% of the staffers and managers were women. So it shows the fear about even just negotiating for a raise. Luckily, by the way, things have improved with negotiating for women. I mean, new stats show that 70% of women have tried to renegotiate their pay, with 60% saying they're successful. But here's the problem with that: 30% of women aren't negotiating. That's an issue. Every woman should be negotiating her salary for a new job or for a promotion. But many women don't do it because there is this fear of this sort of acrimonious back and forth that women just don't want to get into, and they feel like they're not good at it. The irony is women are innately great conversationalists, and when you look at a negotiation, it's really just a conversation with a goal in mind. And it's important to not think of it as an acrimonious situation, and not to fear negotiating for a higher salary.
Something I really like about your book, Alison, is that you like to make things simple. And yet the financial industry has a way, doesn't it, of making money and investing and so on seem more complicated than it actually is.
You make a good point. It is a huge problem that the jargon that's used, it's so complex. The puts and the shorts and it's there's so much jargon, and there's so much to go through, and just like buying a car from a car salesman or car saleswoman. It's jargon that we're not used to using every day. So that breeds that fear and that hesitation in getting into investing. And that goes for a lot of financial products, by the way. That's even with when you're buying a house, and looking to take out a loan and a mortgage for your house, or getting a life insurance policy, or looking about disability. I mean, these are all things, by the way, that are in the book, but that I try to cut through all the noise and whittle it down, just like a journalist would if you're writing a newspaper article or writing a TV story, to make it easy to understand. And it's tough, but investing per se, it's got a lot of masculine themes, a lot of masculine metaphors. We talk about the bull, we talk about beating the bull, we watch TV and they call it the halftime report, and we hear money man, and then there's the reality of the situation. There are far more CEOs of Fortune 500 companies who are male than there are females. So the financial industry is dominated by men, you know, up and down the chain of command. And so that kind of sends a signal that men must be better at finance and investing than women, which is not necessarily the case. Um, by the way, Fidelity did a survey of 12 million investors and showed that women actually have far better savings rates than men, and beat men in investing by 40 basis points when they are engaged. So just because of women are less confident, which is ironic, they're less confident, so they're not ready to jump on that shiny object or that next hot investment, and they're not going to day trade necessarily like men do. So that's why that study showed women coming out ahead over men.
What would your advice be to women who are watching this and thinking, yeah, I really need to wise up about money as well? Perhaps they've left things to their partner to sort out. How do they start?
I think if you're not involved, and let's say you have a husband who is completely involved, I think go to him and start to have a conversation and say, you know what, I want to start to understand what you're investing in. Show me the passwords to all the investment accounts. Show me how much debt we're carrying. Um, what's your life insurance policy say? Let me see that. Who are the beneficiaries on there? Let me see that. oh, you don't have disability insurance? Maybe we should consider you getting disability insurance. And this is assuming if the woman doesn't work. If she does work, she should also have life insurance policy. She should also have disability insurance, perhaps, depending on what she's working in. I think that starting the conversation and 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 getting that communication level open is really the first step. If she's not married and she wants to get control of her finances, I think budgeting is the start. And I know it sounds basic, but there are a lot of people who don't budget. And budgeting means splitting your income, knowing how much money is going out and what you're spending it on versus how much money is coming in. And it helps you create that pizza pie and cutting those pieces and not just saving for now and paying bills for now, but also saving money and investing money for your future self. And I think it all comes down to budgeting. So you can make sure that enough is going towards your bills, enough is going towards your investments, your emergency savings account, and then of course leave some money over for the fun things in life too. I don't want to take all the joy out of life, but it's important to have that full visibility, and I really do think it starts with budgeting.
What's your view on the value of financial advisors and particularly holistic financial planners? What value do they add, particularly in relation to women?
I think that they're super important, obviously. And as you said, for the holistic financial planning that you're going after, if you want a full view of like where you are now and where you're going, I think a certified financial planner is the way to go. Um, but you want to make sure that you understand how they are earning the money off of you. Are they commission based? If they're commission based, how much of a percentage are they getting of your portfolio? How is that structured? Also, keep in mind there are ways to hire certified financial planners who are not commission based, and just start to once again get online and start looking for non-commission based certified financial planners. And there are organizations that do have these.
Finally, Alison, you say this lack of confidence about money begins in childhood. What would you say then to parents and grandparents of girls? What can they do to instill financial confidence in girls?
I think involve your kids, boys and girls, in your financial decision making. So let's say even just as simple as the refrigerator broke and you need to shop for a new refrigerator. So you'll probably do that online. Have them sit next to you and show them that you're actually shopping around for something and the value of things. Also, if you are if you're maybe deciding whether or not to put something on your credit card or not, maybe try to give a basic explanation as to maybe why you're doing it and why you're going to be able to pay that off when the bill comes the next month, which is what I would hope, because we don't want to carry credit card debt unless we're really in dire straits. I think creating moments where you can have conversations with your kids about money will make it feel more accessible, will make it, especially with girls, will make it feel like they are also in the mix, that it's not something that is a mystery or should be misunderstood, or is sort of shrouded in this cloud of once again misunderstanding or fear. I think just bringing it out into the open and having a conversation daily about money is really, really important.
Alison Kosik, thank you very much.
Thanks for your time.
That's about it for this episode. Thank you to Alison Kosik and to our sponsor, Index Fund Advisors. If you'd like to talk to an evidence-based financial advisor, just get in contact via the IFA homepage at ifa.com. That's ifa.com. Enjoyed this episode? Then hit subscribe and perhaps share it with a friend who might find it helpful. Also, we'd love to hear your thoughts, so do leave a rating or review. Until next time, goodbye.